Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Abby Huseth, and this is my colleague Amy Sillenberg here at Climate Smart Missoula. We are sharing this recording today on July 8th, 2025. It is a recording of a presentation we gave just a week ago with some updates. And we're going to share all that we know about the process of going solar and what you need to consider if that's something that you're looking into today through the rest of 2025. So without further ado, we'll get started here. We are Climate Smart Missoula, and we have been around here in our community for about 10 years. This is our 10th year, and we work on a wide range of climate solutions for our community. We think of our work in three interconnected areas, three legs of a sides of a triangle: climate resilience, so addressing the effects of climate change in our community, and climate mitigation, addressing the causes of climate change and what we can do to reduce our impacts, like going solar and transitioning to clean energy. And a big piece of our work is also engagement and movement building, helping bring more folks into the climate movement and find their place and do all this work and move forward together. So today we're going to give an overview of, again, the process of going solar. We'll share what we know about the solar landscape today and what's changing and what you should know. And then we'll dive into the process and really the nitty-gritty of going through evaluating solar for your home or business. And then we're also going to share some about the process of electrification and why that fits so well with going solar and why it's something you might want to consider as you're making your plan for your home or business. And we always like to share ways that folks can get further involved and be advocates, not just for going solar, but growing solar. As we know that it's takes all of us to make the changes we need to build a stable climate for our community and beyond. All right. So we always feel like it's helpful to ground our work in the values that we hold as an organization. And we're big fans of Bill McKibben, who has spoken a lot about the importance of having some stability for the work that needs to happen into the future. And he says, our job, everyone's job in these next 5 years, is to arrest the sudden and sickening lurch upwards in temperature so that there's somewhere a little stable for those young people to stand, those young people who are all working together to build a stable future. And the best proxy for that stability is the number of solar panels and wind turbines and batteries we install between now and the end of the decade. So we're doing our part here in Missoula to boost that number of solar panels that we install. And hopefully you can figure out how to be part of that effort tonight as well. So like we've said, the big picture is that we know what we're doing here. We know that we have to get off fossil fuels for our climate and increasingly for our health. Utilities are raising energy rates. And at the same time, we know that electricity powered by clean and renewable sources is safe, reliable, efficient, affordable. So we have the solutions that we need right here. Not only are they individual solutions, but really we think about it in terms of what our community's goals are and how to do this work collectively. And here in Missoula, we have a goal to achieve 100% clean electricity for our urban area by 2030. It's an ambitious goal, and we've got a long ways to go to get there, but every solar panel system that's installed helps us get a little bit closer to that goal. For context, here in Missoula, this is the most recent data that we've got. It's from 2023, but you know the slides of these slices of pie have not changed too much over the years. Buildings really are responsible for a huge chunk of our community's carbon and methane emissions. So the more we can do to address our built environment, whether that's getting off of fossil fuels in our buildings, and then powering them with clean electricity. That's going to go a long way towards shrinking this pie and reducing our community's emissions. In addition to community emissions, there's lots going on that directly impacts solar. So we've had a really long run of excellent incentives for going solar. There's been, in 2022, when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, it both expanded and extended a number of tax credits for energy efficiency as well as solar. And today, the tax credit, the federal tax credit for installing a solar system still stands at 30%. We'll speak to this later, but the recent federal budget bill that was passed would end those tax credits after 2025. But for now, through the end of the year, that 30% tax credit still stands, and that's a really big incentive for lots of folks that helps make solar pencil out. Here in our community, because of that incentive and a number of others, as well as costs continuing to drop across the board for solar, we've seen a lot of growth in the industry. There's been more installers. We've seen people going door to door selling solar for the first time in the last couple of years. There's been some challenges around that, but overall, there's been an abundance of good options for going solar in our community, and there still are today. When it comes to local policy, that is also something that we always keep our eye on. In our state legislature in this past session, just in 2025, we were looking out for any attempts to change our net metering policy, and that's essentially a billing mechanism that allows folks who install rooftop solar to claim a credit for any excess they produce over a 12-month cycle. And it really makes solar in a place like Montana, where we have long dark winters and long, then on the other side, long summer days with plenty of sunlight. Those sort of makes those curves really even out. So net metering is a really important policy that makes solar in Montana so attractive for lots of folks. And that is in place. It's still a really good deal. In the legislature this session, there was an attempt to, for the very first time, pass a community solar bill in Montana. This is legislation that's been passed in a number of other states, and it would have enabled shared solar systems, so systems not on somebody's roof, but that anybody could essentially purchase the power produced from solar in a larger system elsewhere. And really would have expanded access to solar for so many more folks in our communities. Unfortunately, that bill, even though it passed both chambers by a bipartisan majority, it was vetoed by the governor. It's not totally dead there right now. There's some efforts to override that, but regardless of the outcome of SB 188, there's a really strong, again, bipartisan coalition now that's interested in ensuring community solar can happen in the near future in our state. So we'll be continuing to look for that because we know that rooftop solar is not accessible to everyone. And then just really big picture nationwide, it's pretty exciting to see how much solar has grown. Over just the last year, you can see that the bar on the far right of this chart there, that lowest gold is the amount of new electric generating capacity that's installed in the whole country that's solar. So that's 65% of all new electric generation capacity last year was solar. And when you combine that with other clean sources and battery storage, I think it was something like 94% of new energy. So that's the direction things are going. Regardless of any changes at the federal level, part of our message today is that solar is not going anywhere. It's still a hugely important tool in our toolbox for addressing climate change, but also helping folks get some control over energy bills and make smart investments. So we're going to dive right into that process now. I spoke a little bit about net metering, but it is a billing mechanism, but it's also an actual process by which when you get a solar system, and if you would want to be connected to the grid, which is by far the most common way of doing it in our state, there are some limitations on the size of a system that you can connect to a grid. If you're a Northwestern Energy customer, that's 50 kilowatts, but that's quite a big system. For most residential and even smaller businesses, that's plenty of space. So when you connect your system to the grid, you need what's actually called a net meter. It can run both forwards and backwards. So when you're producing more power than you're using, you're getting credits for that excess power that's produced. And then you have 12 months to use up those excess credits. So again, a lot of folks will turn their systems on and then start banking those credits over those long summer days, and then use up those credits through the winter, and then zero out at the end of that 12-month cycle and start the whole thing again. So we don't get any credit payments for excess power produced over and above what you use over an annual cycle. But that one-to-one credit, again, is a really good deal. So as you're thinking about installing solar, it's relatively a straightforward process. If you've got a rooftop that has good sunlight access and faces south, and increasingly even areas of rooftops that face west or east, it's worth getting a couple bids and seeing what solar would look like for you. We do always recommend getting at least 2 bids to compare. Clearwater Credit Union has a great helpful bid comparison worksheet, and that's going to be linked on some of the resources that we share here at the end of this presentation. But really important to be able to compare apples to apples, and some installers will provide some really detailed information and others won't, and it will give you the ability to make sure that you're asking all the right questions. An installer will come and do a free site assessment. They'll calculate your system size based on the last full year of energy bills. But a caveat to that is, and again, we'll speak a little bit in a moment to any changes you might be projecting for your energy use. But typically they'll use that last full year of bills to project how much you're going to be using into the future. And if you have plans to electrify, if you'd like to add an EV charger, or you're planning on getting rid of an old gas furnace and switching to a heat pump system to heat and cool your home, that would definitely affect the size of the solar system you might be looking into installing. So any good installer will be able to help walk you through some of those questions about projected use. And they're going to really try to maximize your system for the roof space available and for the amount of annual electricity usage. It really makes sense to try to offset as much of your electricity use as possible. The cost of the panels themselves has come down so much, it's relatively inexpensive. So getting the most out of that installation is our recommendation, best way to go. I think I'm ready to pass it over to my colleague Amy here, talk about financing and sort of making a plan for the rest of the process.
Yeah, great. So a few things to add. Thank you, Abby. Hopefully you now have some sense of how to do it. And then there's always the question of how to pay for it and what's involved there. So a quick update here, as Abby had mentioned, for the number of years, we've had this 30% federal tax credit for almost everyone. And we still have it today. But it is now, thanks to the recent federal reconciliation bill, slated to end at the end of this year. So residents would, if you're able to go solar for a residential home this year, and get that system online by the end of this year, you'll be able to receive that 30% tax credit. It can be amortized over a handful of years, up to 5 years, but you do need to have some tax liability. So that's the first thing to know. For nonprofits and businesses, we're not going to detail that right now. There are options to use that currently, and it just gets a little bit more nuanced and complicated. So be in touch with us if you happen to be thinking of a solar system for a nonprofit, public entity, or a commercial, especially something that's larger in size than a typical small scale, less than 50 kilowatt system. So some people will take cash and pay for their system straight out and then gets that tax credit back to them from the federal government. There are no state tax credits available anymore. There used to be, but those have ended. In terms, a lot of people will actually go for a loan, and Clearwater Credit Union has a very good solar loan available, and you can connect with them. You don't have to necessarily be a member to get a Clearwater Credit solar loan, but they have some great options there. And then Montana DEQ, our state office, the Department of Environmental Quality, also has a revolving loan fund, and you can apply to be part of that. They're now looking at those in 4-month cycles. So I'm sorry, 4 quarters, 3-month cycles. It's a little complicated, and they do have a whole number of criteria that you may or may not meet, especially if you're in Missoula. They're just trying to expand solar around the state and have developed a slightly different system. If you looked into this a year or two ago, it's now slightly different. But they do have a loan. It's you can just find it on their website, and you can talk to the folks at DEQ if you might be interested there. They just have slightly different terms than Clearwater. But those are the 2 best options that we know of for solar loans. There are, of course, more options just depending on what you have in your financial docket about how you might do things. I think I'll skip to the next slide and talk about a little bit of some cautions and considerations. So we do know now that with this tax credit ending at the end of this calendar year, there's going to be a rush. A lot of people are going to try to jump into this. We do suggest you start early so that you have time to still do the due diligence of talking to potentially 2 installers, getting a couple bids, and don't feel too rushed so that you can get the system that you want that meets your needs. The other thing I'll just mention there is as we get towards the end of 2025, there may be some considerations around whether that system needs to be completed or just started. And we just recommend that you get started now so that you're not bumping up against that calendar year change in order to take advantage of that tax credit. So that's the number 1 recommendation: get started. Some people have other considerations beyond solar, thinking about potentially adding a battery backup system to your home, and that may be something that you want to do. Most of the solar installers will be pretty aware of how to incorporate batteries and what that might mean. It's still fairly expensive, and a lot of folks are choosing to hold off on that, at least for now, with a net metered attached to the grid system. But that is something that you can consider and talk to folks about, or we're happy to answer some more questions there at a further time. Again, we mentioned EVs. Those do have a significant, electricity output, and so you want to consider whether you have or may have an EV attached to your solar system, just to, again, size that. There are some other financing options for large projects, nonprofits and governments. There's a state program called CPACE that may allow you to afford a system in a more creative financing way. And we're not going to get into that, but if you have, again, a larger project, talk to us sometime soon. Okay, so we have a lot of this information on our website. Hopefully you have many of your questions answered, but you may have some more. So you can go to MissoulaClimate.org and the solar page under mitigation on the top bar, and you'll find a lot of this information and more. And we also, as Abby mentioned, want to connect this solar to our efforts to increase the rate of electrification, having more of our appliances that are electrified, as we call it, that are powered by electricity, because we can continue to green the grid or provide clean energy for the electrification. Our appliances that run on natural gas will always be 100% fossil fuel. That's the nature of natural or methane gas, and it's very polluting. So by combining electrification and solar, it's good for the climate and has financial benefits, can save you money, especially as our utility rates are going up for electricity. So in order to, again, as Abby mentioned, figure out how big a system you may be able to both afford and fit on your roof and just desire, it is important to understand your energy use. What are the energy hogs in your home? What things use a lot of electricity, or maybe use methane gas and might be able to be swapped for a more efficient electric system. So again, these are things like heat pumps, induction stoves, and more. We have a program that's joint with Missoula County and the city of Missoula called Electrify Missoula, and lots of resources there. So whether you're looking to potentially upgrade a domestic water heater, add a heat pump, HVAC system, or whether you're thinking about cooking, transportation, all of that stuff, or ideas about how to do all that and considerations is available on that electrifymissoula.org webpage. So we really encourage you to go to there and learn more so that you can pair electrification with solar. One thing we just highlight is the electrified success stories are super helpful for giving you some ideas about what you can electrify and how, and maybe some of the challenges and things you may not be able to readily change from a natural gas system to an electrified system. It's not all easy in the retrofit world, but we have a lot of success stories, and we're always building out that part of our website. Okay. And then really, as Abby mentioned at the very beginning, we do want to not just go solar, but we want to grow solar. We want to really extend it beyond what we see today and even beyond you folks listening for residential. So a couple ideas here. We do at Climate Smart Missoula have a footprint fund, which is a way that we are addressing the intersection of climate and housing affordability. So we pull in funds from others, especially related to some of your own personal or business climate, your footprint, how much emissions that maybe you produce, you want to offset those, you can join and be part of our footprint fund. We raise money, we pool it together, and then we help folks in the low income or low income community either improve their solar system, get a solar system, and also work on some energy efficiency sides of the built environment. So it's a way to help, again, because we have so few options, be able to help some of our community members have the benefits of solar. And then Abby also mentioned community solar, that SB 188, that we are still waiting to see if there's even a chance that we could override the governor's veto, but this is not an idea that's going to just dissipate. It's a great way for us to grow solar and allow other folks who maybe don't have a rooftop or don't have the appropriate roof to be part of the solar transition. So we just wanted to mention again that the economics are great for community solar, and if we don't make it happen this year, a collective group of folks all around the state are going to work to make that happen someday. Lots of things that can still happen down the road. Okay, and then the last couple of points here that we wanted to make, we already talked about the tax credits that are sunsetting are going away. Some of the other questions folks have around solar is also, are the prices of these solar panels and systems going up with tariffs? And we have seen across the board, or in general, some uptick in the cost of systems because of the tariffs and the economic uncertainty around those tariffs. So that is something that you can talk to your potential solar installer about what they're seeing. Are those prices going up? Some of the solar installers have procured ahead of the tariffs a number of panels that they're then offering at good deals to their customers. So that's just a question that will make it more difficult, but at this point, it's still workable. They're still working around this tariff issue. What else can we do to ensure that solar continues to grow? A couple things that we wanted to offer. Even though the reconciliation bill passed and has been signed into law, we don't think it's time to be quiet. We need to continue to let our elected officials from Congress on down know that we want clean energy and solar, and subsidies for fossil fuels and growing the fossil fuel sector is the wrong way to go. So please find ways to speak up, let our elected officials know, spread the word about solar. You can write letters to the editor. Those are LTEs. You can talk to your neighbors. You can get some yard signs. You can promote the good things that are happening in the solar that you may have. One of the best ways that solar expands is by that ripple effect. One or two people in a neighborhood get solar and they start talking to their neighbors, and before you know it, there are solar panels everywhere. So spreading the word is really important. Thank you for being a part of that. And we also wanted to mention that upcoming, we are going to be celebrating solar and talking more about this between now and the end of the year and beyond, even if those tax credits go away and some of the incentives get squashed, sadly. A number of groups and people are planning a big celebration for solar on the fall equinox Sunday. That's September 21st. Keep your eye out. There are going to be some activities and actions happening here in Missoula. And then a week later, we at Climate Smart Missoula host our annual Climate Fest. We used to call it the Expo, but it's really a festival for all things climate solutions. We'll be talking a lot about solar there. That is September 27th, and that is the launch of a Climate Solutions Week that we bring forward with a ton of other partners and businesses and groups in town to just celebrate all of the things that we can do towards building up climate solutions in our community and beyond. So September 27th is the fest, and it runs for a week through October 5th, where we have a big community bike ride called Climate Ride. So keep your eyes out for information there. We'll continue to talk about how to go solar and electrify in all of those events. And then finally, a lot of people are interested in this because Northwestern Energy is raising our electricity rates and making plans to change the rates and procure different kinds of energy sources. And there's a whole bunch of ways that we can help to understand those issues and push back against the things we don't agree with and communicate with our Public Service Commission, or the PSC, because they ultimately take the actions that are necessary given the information that they gather. So keep your eyes out for information about the PSC and Northwestern Energy. It's something that we track. We're not as involved as some of our groups like the Montana Renewable Energy Association or MEIC, who are deeply involved. But there's lots of ways that we can understand those issues and weigh in and try to help our entire state move towards cleaner energy, not just one rooftop at a time, but beyond. Let's see. Oh, real quick, we mentioned this last week, but there is a website and some information. There's a website called Heat Map, and it's a kind of newer a reporting site and information where there's just a lot of writing and reporting that's been really doing deep dives at tackling some of what's happened with, in particular, the reconciliation bill. And we just wanted to provide that as maybe one of those resources as things shift and change rapidly. We have the bill, but there's also executive orders and clarifications and things happening to that. So one of the many sites that you can go to for more information as the landscape changes somewhat rapidly before our eyes. So check out Heat Map, and they also have a podcast that's excellent called Shift Key. Okay, so that is the wrap up for this discussion. We hope that you stay informed, support our work, go to MissoulaClimate.org for more. You're probably already there if you're viewing this webinar. Do bookmark and check out electrifymissoula.org. And then if you have questions that came from this presentation, info@climatesmartmissoula.org, or you probably know how to find Abby, myself, and the many partners that we work with, because this is a big team effort. And with that, we'll sign off.